Yeah, really nice to be here. Really nice to be talking to everyone, shaking hands, coming back sort of in person after pandemic. This is our biggest event after the pandemic. We have done smaller ones, but this feels surreal, especially to folks who were here fairly early. There are people here who were with us in 2014, 15, 16, 17, when we were running in a small room somewhere in Sunnyvale. To all of us, it feels sort of very surreal. Thank you all for making this, making the trek. There are people here from Boston, I hear. There are people here from Tampa, Florida. There are people here from Davis, right? and many other places I'm sure I just haven't had a chance to meet. Thank you for taking the red-eye flights. Thank you for putting up in a hotel to be here today. It means a lot to us. Thank you for all the blessings of the last 10 years. This is our 11th year running, and we have about 4,000 active students today. This is the West Coast. We will do more events like this on the East, Seattle, Austin, and such. Let's get going with the first session. I have some really interesting people and really awesome insights coming up. Guys, let's go. Our team is here from India as well, right? As some of you know, a lot of us are in India, and some of them have actually made the trek just for the week, just to be here. And so feel free to meet them as well. Very happy, very proud. All right. Okay. So this is the first session. The title is up there, ML and Data Careers in the Age of AI. Nobody here is living under a rock, but if you are, we are in the age of AI. Yes. The whole day today is about exploring sort of the next few years. That's the oriented theme to the session. The first session is on ML. The second one is on financial independence. Right? We in tech have lucked out in more ways than one, so we can even think about financial independence. And how do we manage that? If somebody wants to do that, how does one manage that? That's the second session discussion. The third session is on product management. Yeah? How do you think sort of forward-looking product management in this world? The next, say, 3 to 5 years. And the final one, don't miss the final one. It's packed with insights. Ryan, my co-founder, is going to lead that. It is a bunch of survey results that we sent out to our instructors. We have hundreds of instructors all across the US at the tier 1 companies, and all the aggregated insights he's going to present. I think it's going to be very exciting as well. Yeah. All right, let's get going. I'm going to pull out my phone, not to be on the phone, but just so I don't forget the questions that I'm supposed to ask. Okay. Let's start with intros now. And obviously, one last thing: there are microphones for the audience here. Yes, who has the microphones? There are 2 microphones for the audience. Okay, you're carrying them. Awesome. We'll do some Q&A with the panel, and then we'll open it up for questions. We have 1 more hour to go. We have sufficient time. We'll do Q&A for about half an hour, a little bit longer than half an hour, and then rest about 20 minutes or so. We'll take questions. No question, like I say in the orientation, the only dumb question is? The only dumb question is? One that is not asked. Exactly right. Perfect. Okay. Somebody's listening to my orientations. All right. Great. Just make a note, pencil them. Right? We'll go. Okay. Let's start with the intros. Yes. Let's do slightly detailed intros, if you don't mind. Yeah. So, Sandeep, please go.
So hey everyone, it's great to be here. My name is Sandeep Kachru. I'm a co-founder of an AI startup called Agami.ai. We are building a platform to help companies monetize their data. We started this company about 8-10 months ago, so very new, very early stage. Before that, I spent about 2 years at Airtable, leading their data platform team. So that was data infrastructure and data engineering. Before that, I spent a bunch of years at some Faang companies. Started my career as a software engineer and moved into data. So glad to be here. I have spent most of my time on data engineering and data infrastructure, so a lot of the backend stuff. So really happy to be here and share my insights.
Awesome. You spent some time at Faang companies. Mm-hmm. Which ones, if you just for the audience, don't mind.
So I spent 1 year at Amazon, and then I spent about 5 years at Google and about 5 years at Meta. The 1 year at Amazon was not because I didn't like Amazon. I moved from Seattle to Bay Area. I couldn't take the weather there. But yeah, it has been a great experience. I think each company is very different in terms of their culture, as many of you might know. But each of them sort of enriched my experience, and it's helped me navigate my career and brought me here.
Got it. Have you been in largely on the data platforms and engineering side most of your
I have spent a lot more time on the data engineering and data infrastructure side, but I've also worked very closely with, on the software side, on the back end, event logging and stuff, with data science partners, a little bit of ML, and now in my current day-to-day job, it's almost everything, right? When you're in a startup, you do everything, a little bit of front-end, middleware, back-end, AI, everything.
You're the CTO and the peon.
Exactly, yeah.
Awesome. Very good. Very good. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Incidentally, Sandeep and I went to the same undergrad school, but I don't think we knew each other. Not very well.
Not very well.
Not very well. But we came to know of it sort of much later. Sorry, is there like a logistics question, or if it is? Can we do questions after one sort of? Please do pencil things down. Yeah, just to not break the flow. Yeah. Thank you. Manoj.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Manoj here. I've been at Meta for 7 years. I joined. Maybe I also got lucky at the same time as they founded this new organization called AI Infra. Right? I was one of the founding members. In fact, that was my cell call also during the interview. Hey, we are going to start this new infra called AI.
Start this new AI infra team.
Yes.
Okay.
And now it's like, it has grown leaps and bounds. Like we are 1,000 plus people just on the infra side. Infra is like primarily frameworks. Like some of you have heard of PyTorch, right? So it's Cafe2, PyTorch. So started in the frameworks area. Cafe2 at the time, there was no PyTorch. It was more on the research side. And then PyTorch, then things moved from more Cafe2 to PyTorch side. For folks who are familiar with it, Cafe2 is more like a graph-based programming model, very similar to TensorFlow. And PyTorch is more like Python, right? Like it's very easy to use. So that's why it's the popularity increased.
I see.
Leaps and bounds in the last few years. So started with frameworks and then worked on and the reason they hired me was, hey, my background is HPC, high performance computing. That's where I got my PhD. I didn't have any ML background. They said, hey, our models are getting larger, more than one machine. Can you figure out how to solve large model training? I mean, large model training is what the keyword that's kind of democratized now, thanks to LLMs. But before we call it as distributed training. Okay, can you do the training from single machine to multiple machine and make sure the model stays accurate? So that's how we started, and we built the platform. We built the HPC platform to train large models. It was more internal, and then thanks to the last 2 years, thanks to generative AI and LLMs, this space has also democratized, and it's not just only a niche thing, an internal usage tool inside the company, but it became like a more pervasive. So lot of I think that was my that's what I've been doing large model training and now inference as well. Before that, I was in VMware doing more virtualization stuff. Before that, I was in academia for a long time doing HPC research. So.
Got it. Are you able to hear Manoj clearly? Yeah. Okay, awesome. So before that, so you start with academia. You have a PhD in CS.
Yes. Yep.
Right. I see. And did you teach in academia?
No.
You didn't teach in academia, but you worked in academia for a bit.
Yep.
Got it. Your background was in high performance computing, and then you moved to Meta.
Right. I mean, that, I thought like, because HPC was predominantly, I don't know how many people are aware of HPC or parallel programming, or the layman term is supercomputing.
Yeah.
It was predominantly used in like weather modeling, computational fluid dynamics, molecular dynamics. So it was a very researchy topic. And that's why IBM's or NVIDIA was one of the early partners when the Moore's law were hitting the wall. Like 2007 was when we started using GPUs in HPC, right? Nobody, like, for, luck favors the brave, right?
Yeah.
I think NVIDIA was like really struggling. I mean, but they were like more passionate about like building GPUs for HPC machines, right? Like HPC, like at the end, if you it's all like matrix multiplies. Pretty much all matrix multiplies. So and GPUs are amazing vector processing machines. So we're using it, but then. I thought HPC will never come to industry. I'll probably stay in research. That's why I moved to VMware. I thought, like, let me move to industry, and like I have to change my field from HPC. But then, people working in HPC, like computer science, that if your field is not hot right now, just wait for a few years. It's a cycle.
Yeah.
Every 5 years, your field will become. It could be big data, operating systems, compilers, AI. And thanks to AI now, compilers are hot area, and semiconductors now again.
Right, but again, and you joined a small team at Meta, and then they said, hey, here is a model. Can you train it on multiple computers, like in a distributed fashion? And that model became Llama. Is the idea? Yeah,
we started with more personalization. Right? At the time, there was no language. NLP came a bit later, right? So a lot of our original large models are either image, computer vision, but that's easy, right? Mostly the hardest, the more challenging models are recommendation models, right? Like you have large embeddings and...
right.
So I started with more, like, when you open your Instagram or Facebook page, like what ads to show you, right? Like, so it's called ads ranking, or how do you rank your feed based on... that's where I started with.
When Manoj says it's easy, it is actually easy. Because he teaches at IK as well. And he teaches really well. So it is easy, right?
It's easy. I mean, like, come on. It's how, if you can understand linear algebra, multivariable calculus, which is like what, high school math, right?
Just high school math.
By the way, how many here are mechanical engineers? I'm asking. Like, okay, mechanical engineering is probably one of the difficult engineering because you have to do all the advanced math, right? Like especially if you're taking thermodynamics, fluid dynamics. Come on, those are partial differential equations and integration. That's hard math. Deep learning, it's like basic linear algebra. I mean, like we are like cheating linear and non-linearity with like sigmoid and softmax and the ReLUs, right? It's practically linear equations. It's math is not hard, but people just get intimidated. I think that's the first fear.
Exactly. Thank you.
You asked for details.
No. Mengying, please.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mengying. I'm currently leading growth at MotherDuck. So for folks who don't know about MotherDuck, so MotherDuck is a data warehouse solution on top of DuckDB. I joined this company just about 2 months ago, so I'm pretty new in this area as well. Before MotherDuck, I spent a little bit over 3 years at Notion, leading growth data science team over there. So our team partners very closely with like marketing, finance, product engineering to drive the growth of user and business for Notion. And before Notion, I worked at Meta for 4 years as a data scientist, also as a data science manager across 3 different teams, including notification, ads products, and the creator monetization team. And before that, I worked at Microsoft as a data scientist for 2 years.
Data science. We'll come to that. We'll come to that.
Yeah, we'll come to that for sure. It's very important.
No, there is actually genuine confusion in the market today that like where does data analysis end and data science start? Where does data science stop and like engineering start? Like, things like that. And I think bigger companies it is somewhat easier to say, okay, this is data science. This is not. Smaller companies there is like a lot of mishmash.
Yeah, and even for the same, even for big companies, data science means different things as well.
Different things.
Yeah, for example, for Meta, data science mostly mean like product analytics Data scientists, people work very closely with product engineer, they embedded within the team to help drive the business decisions. But for example, for Google, they have some roles called quantitative analyst before, and now they brand.
What is it called again?
It's called quantitative analyst. And now I think they all call them data scientists.
Data scientists, I see.
But their data science also have, one side data science are working on this kind of product analytics, but another side data science working specifically with ads on their ranking algorithm. So they're more like a machine learning engineer. So like even with the same title, you still have to ask their specific job description in order to know what their job is.
What job is. Understood. Awesome. Thank you. Welcome. Chang.
Awesome. Hey everyone, good morning. Wow, what a turnout for 9 a.m.
9 a.m., yes, that's
So,
right. Like
Salam's clearly got some magic.
Yes, I was actually going to bet we're not going to have people. It's like midnight right now, but please.
Yeah, awesome. Hey everyone, so my name is Chen. I currently lead our data foundations unit at Discord. What that basically breaks down is into data platform, data infrastructure, our experimentation platform, as well as our data engineering teams. I spent about almost 3 years with some rounding error here at Discord, kind of built some of these foundational teams up from scratch. And prior to that, spent the past decade or so in big tech, specifically breaking that down. Started at LinkedIn, actually on the other side of things. So started in data science. And then eventually got a little bit more, crawled myself more into code, more into the back end of things, more or less as a passion, got into data engineering, spent about 7.5 years in that function at Facebook at the time, and then of course Meta, across a wide variety of different teams there. Most recently in AI. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Got it. Okay. When I think of data careers in data and ML, right, and I see that as on a spectrum, like it starts with data and then sort of ends in all engineering deployment as such. Is that the right way to view it? Or let me just enumerate data careers, right, data-related careers. Call it data engineering, data science, right? And within ML engineering, there are people who work on the models, like they make the models, call them scientists or call them whatever. Then there are people who fine-tune, right? And there are people who just use the models, like applied ML, call it. Use the APIs, which is mostly software engineering. They don't really need to know anything more than just using LangChain or those orchestration layers on top of this. So five roles, let's say: data engineering, data science. Call them people who make models, like, modelers. Like they actually work on Llama, they work on Gemini, they work on GPT. And there are people who do fine-tuning, like take those models and fine-tune them. And then there are people who just use the models. Is that the right segmentation of what data roles are in your minds? Anyone? Or am I missing anything, or like, nah, this is too much?
I think you touched upon a lot of topics.
Yeah, it's a controversial topic, I guess. I mean, when I think of it, there is, I think, one thing I love about data is that the boundaries are a bit fluid, right? So there's also data infrastructure. You know, some people just specialize in data infrastructure, and these are the people who are, implementing Databricks, Snowflake, or the modern data stack or whatever. It's kind of a specialized role within data, but then it also overlaps with data engineering a lot. I think the data engineering role then overlaps a little bit with sometimes data analytics. I think the last two that you mentioned, the fine-tuning and applied, I think, yeah, that, in my mind, I think that falls more within software engineering. I don't think of them as typically data roles, but again, the definitions are, I don't think we have agreed on the definitions. So for me, the core roles are really data engineering, data science, the data analytics, data science, and the model, what you call the modelers. Right?
So you distinguish between data platforms and data engineers, like people who work
no, I mean, I'm bucketing all of that together, but in the market, you might see that differentiation a little bit. Yeah.
Got it. And data analyst, which is the one I missed as well.
Yeah. I don't know what the rest of the panel.
Yeah, maybe one thing I can probably talk about is probably how Notion has been, dividing these different functions within our data org. So at Notion, we have a big data org called, like, basically the data org, which is overseen by head of data. And under the data org, we have data science function, data engineering, data platform, and AI. So there are 4 different functions in parallel. So data science, which include both data analysts and data scientists, will work closely with business partners to generate insights for them. Data engineer most focus on the, so actually data engineer has both data engineer and BI in the same function. So data engineer is mostly focused on building ETL pipelines, building the data model, and BI is working with Tableau to generate the dashboards for the company. And then we have data platform engineer who are actually working on a lot of like backend infra side of things. For example, like Spark, Airflow, and vector database and all that kind of stuff. For example, they basically serve as a foundational layer for all the products within Notion that are going to use data. And then the next function about AI. So AI has more detailed kind of like function like within the AI team. For example, they have machine learning engineers who focus on the fine-tuning side of things, because for Notion, even we have Notion AI, but we don't have our own model, which is called the API from Anthropic and OpenAI, and we do some fine-tuning our side. We also have a lot of engineers just to put the AI into the product. So as Sandeep mentioned, they're more like engineers.
That's not a data role, that's just an engineering role.
Yeah, exactly. It's just engineer. They just like, AI is just a feature, basically. And also, which also means on the data science side, we have dedicated data science to work with that team specifically to understand the usage, the performance of AI.
Got it. Okay. If you look 1 to 2 years ahead, right, in all these roles that we define, right, like from data engineering all the way through, how do you see people changing? How do you see those roles changing? Right? People spend time doing certain things today, and with tools coming in, newer tools coming into the market, right, and AI getting into those fields as well. In fact, very interesting stat that we are going to discuss in the insight session at the end is that data engineers seem to use tools more than software engineers, like AI tools more than software engineers. It's quite a weird thing, but it's actually real, like statistically significantly more usage is found in the data engineering field than software engineering field. That makes me wonder, like, how is that field changing in the next couple of years? If you think about it, like, are there new things coming in that would make people do other different things than what they're doing today? Is ETL going to just fundamentally change, as you sort of see, maybe 1 to 2 years or 3 to 5 years? So whatever the timeline is, short or medium term, is the work going to change? Do you see that coming on the platform side or engineering side?
Yeah, I'll take this one to start off with. So yeah, in the data engineering space, I'd say the landscape is definitely evolving, is probably the right word here. We have, as you mentioned, there's a lot of federation of tools out there. So tools, infrastructure, what are the actual mechanisms that people use to solve for their jobs? And we can elaborate on that, like taking orchestration as an example, right? Like a decade ago, we basically just had Airflow. Everyone knew what Airflow was, everyone just used Airflow. This day and age, you have another solid 4 or 5 kind of competitors in the same space, and so there are some differentiation in terms of the product and the value that it would provide for a specific organization, and so there's more options there. But then on the flip side, to the other side of things, I would say like the core skills for a data engineer, a lot of these pieces are not going to change. While AI is coming in hot, and for good reason, to enhance developer productivity, it's not at the same place of replacing an actual human being in terms of the knowledge around data architecture, data modeling, and understanding what the actual business context and the needs are in that space. So I'd say it's an evolving space, but the core skills that have made data engineers what they are, those are going to continue to thrive in this age of AI.
So the core skills will remain the same, is the idea, regardless of
so.
Yeah, hope so. Right. Interesting, and that's true for everyone from where you are sitting and seeing data-related roles, especially data engineering and data platform roles. They're roughly about the same. Like core skills are going to remain the same. Tools, there are newer tools that people will use. You see engineers becoming more productive because of the tools, because of newer systems. Airflow has been around for 10 years or more, but the newer tools that are coming in, are they coming in with a better promise to say maybe things are getting much faster?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for example, one concrete example is when we evaluated orchestration tools at my current company, we stack ranked Airflow relative to some of the newer offerings, and we ultimately went with Daxter, which is one of the newer orchestration platforms because it solves for the needs of what we were looking for. Generally, more and better observability around our data pipelines, DAGs, and assets.
Interesting. And what about other data roles? Let's call it, say, ML infra or ML related roles. Do you see them changing the next 1 to 2, maybe 3 to 5 years? And in what ways do you see them changing, if at all?
Yes, because the infra that we are using is to build either like large ML models or like even platforms. It could be even data platform, right? It's not your traditional infra, right? Like your traditional infra that these are like special purpose hardware. These are more the application is very tightly coupled application that requires different challenges in the tools. Let me talk about like since Chen was talking about orchestration, right? Let's pick it up from there, right? When we talk about ML pipelines and ML orchestration, like what do people call about? Whenever you're working on a model, like it's usually modeling engineers, right? Like or modeling authors, they work on a model. Let's call this phase as model authoring. Somebody who writes the Llama model, somebody who writes the ChatGPT model, right? Like these are primarily modeling researchers. Very small portion. I don't think so that is going to fundamentally change. I mean, yes, that's going to be a very niche PhD like topic, but like, I mean, if you're interested, you're welcome to work there. But that's a niche area, right? It's when I'm looking at like say 1,000 engineers, this is probably like 20 engineers working on actually the core Llama model, right? Like, I mean, have people looked into the Llama code? Or like any open source modeling code? Like how big is can somebody tell me like the number of lines of Llama code? Exactly, it's few hundreds. So so if people are saying like, hey, AI ML, people naturally tend to think that like the modeling part, right? Like that's like 10 to 20, even like, but the rest of the infra engineers are hundreds of roles. That's where hundreds of thousands of roles, right? Like even OpenAI, like 500 engineers, like 10 to 20 engineers working on the modeling side, like pretty much everyone. Rest of the people are building the platform and infra and the tooling and the automation, observability, debuggability, everything needed for that one. So what are those big areas broadly? Like when you look at AI, right? There is data. Like for the first thing is you need is the data, right? The training examples, the data, or like it could be for, and then the second thing is training, and then finally you do inference. All these three areas has a separate challenges for data engineers, ML engineers. Let's talk about data, right? Like what Mengying was talking about is vector database and features. People like, I mean, they're like your traditional data infrastructure that you are aware of, like it could be a traditional database or your key value store, like they are like, they're not that useful here. Like even you need to build a different data system for it, a data platform for it. And not only that, you have to do the data curation. Right? Like, so that's like, how do you cure the data? I mean, that's one of the big challenges. Like, I mean, like there's like hundreds of engineers literally working on like, how do you take this unstructured data and curate it so that you get the best accuracy? That's like data curation, like, data preparation. So this is one big bucket, right? Data platform. And the second big bucket is training. And training we can split into two areas. Pre-training, which is the one that we use massive supercomputers to train this foundation big models. Where the trend that is going, it's in the past, like everyone like, I have this idea, I have one model for it. So we usually have hundreds of models, right? Like every area, it's one model. Now the world is going towards like foundation models. Like if you heard of this concept called foundation model, like Llama is a foundation model. You build the entire intelligence in one model, and then you do fine-tune it. So that's why they call it as pre-training and training, right? And so pre-training, look at this. It's a completely different infrastructure because you need like massively supercomputers like across multiple data centers, right? Like you have thousands of GPUs. That's your classic your traditional infra, nothing will work there. Maybe you can take some parts of it, but everything has to be designed from scratch. Fine-tuning. Fine-tuning is, okay, now you can take the model and tuning, like what kind of platform, and that's like what Soham and Sandeep are saying, your traditional infra, you can use it, right? Maybe you can tune it in a single machine, maybe you need like only a few cluster of small distributed systems, you don't need sophisticated like big machines. And then, but that's the training part, right? And then there's serving. Serving, which is inference, right? This is where like, when you log to ChatGPT or querying, or you're doing at Meta AI in your WhatsApp, right? It gives you a response. That's serving. Fast. Yes, that's more like your traditional service. Like how do you build a service, right? Like if you have built cloud services, it's very similar. You just need to understand what happens inside. If you understand the basics of ML, you should be able to use your, it's 80% infra role, all these things, right? Like all, except modeling, all these parts, this is where like hundreds of engineers are working. As long as you're able to, one is like more batch processing, training is batch processing, the inference is more like services, right? Like you build cloud services. It's 80% traditional infra. Like your existing knowledge that you have built over your years will like directly translate, as long as you understand what is AI, pipelines, and what is happening, like you understand that application. I think that gap should make you well set for it. And then you can just go and change your LinkedIn profile like you are an ML engineer. That's it, right? So.
Very, very interesting. A question for you, Sandeep. Slightly different track. We'll come back to this. How, given you've worked at several of these companies, how is the internal mobility among these roles? Data engineering, data science, ML, maybe even infra. Yeah. Right? Like, how do companies see this, the internal mobility among roles? And is that changing, or how was it when you were there?
Yeah, I think it's interesting, and it's probably one of the bigger differences between working at a big tech company like Faang companies and working at a smaller company like Airtable or Notion or Discord. In big companies, the roles tend to be very specialized, right? When you go in, you're hired to do a job, and you're the expert in that job. That's why you got that job, and you're expected to do that, right? So if you're hired as a data engineer, you're expected to be expert in certain things. Maybe it's building data pipelines. Maybe it's maybe it's SQL, it's Python, it's something, right? Now, if you have to switch roles and go to, let's say, you're more interested on the data infra side, that's generally a different job role. It's a different org, and you might have to go through the whole interview process again, right? So it's much harder. Sometimes they might make you not go through the entire interview, but you still have to go through some process. So there is internal mobility. You can change job roles, but there are some hurdles. But what I have seen in my experience at startups, these tend to be more fluid, right? And not because they're smaller, but because you're just expected to do many things. You are not just hired or you're only going to build data pipelines, but if you're hired as a data engineer, you are just expected to know about platform a lot more. You will be working on the platform. You might even be asked to do some things that are crossing into software engineer, a generalist space. So if you do that, speaking from my experience, I had engineers who were working on data engineering, and I had engineers who were working on data infrastructure side, and I could move them around pretty easily. It was my decision. There was less bureaucracy, and there was stuff like that. So that's been my experience. I think there is job mobility within big tech, but it tends to be within the job role. So if you're a data engineer working on WhatsApp, you can move into Facebook app, which I did. I moved from Facebook app to WhatsApp. That's pretty easy. But if you had to go from a data engineering role to, let's say, a data infra engineer or ML engineer, it almost feels like interviewing from outside. You have some advantage, but it's much harder. I don't know if that's been your experience as well. Yeah.
Yes, that's more like meta thing, but I don't think so that's the case like in other industries.
I think it's true for maybe the big tech in general, right? Google and Amazon, I don't know. That's
internal mobility at Google is easier, is what I've generally heard.
Between roles or?
Between roles, harder between roles?
Yeah.
Between teams, it's much.
Yeah, between teams is pretty easy at Meta as well. I changed 2 teams, so yeah, it's.
But I think the meta point me and Sandeep are trying to say is, like, to answer your question, like 1 to 2 years, this is where like the demand is, right? Like people, remember modeling is small, but the rest, if it's 20 engineers, like 400 engineers like working on in that pipeline, right? Like if you understand the pipeline, and every area of the pipeline is where, like at least like, I know the Faang companies are, speaking for big tech, that this is where the hiring is like crazy, I would say.
Right. Would you guys say you're struggling to hire in data roles today, or when you look out 1 to 2 years, 3 to 5 years, you think it's going to just get harder to find people, or do you think it's going to get easier to find? Mangying, you want to?
Yeah, I think it depends on who you want to hire.
I mean, on the data side.
On the data side, yes. I mean, like, even for the data side, I think so because like we had a lot of layoffs in the past years. There are so many people, experienced professionals in the market right now. So at least when I was at Notion, every time we have a role released to the market, we got thousands of applications within a week. Basically.
Within a week, it was okay.
Yeah, so which means we do have a lot of candidates, right? But the thing is, we probably gonna screen out probably like 90% of them. Yeah. So that's what I mean. Like also the interview, like the whole kind of the closing process is not shortened either, just because we have so many candidates. And it's because, think about like from other side, because given the changes of AI, of the like the new technology, and from the employer side, we have more dedicated requirements for the data professionals. So for example, from the data science perspective, we really want to hire somebody who has certain experience for example, in finance. Because finance data science is very different from the rest of other data science. They have to know how to do
domain-specific data science, as an example.
Yes, so this is one way to think about it. Another way to think about it is, right now as a leader at an even smaller company, we only have about 40 to 50 people at the company right now. The people we want to hire also have a different portfolio. So we don't want to hire like specialists anymore. We want to hire somebody who has hybrid skills of both data engineer and data scientist.
Okay, you want to hire hybrid skills between engineering and data science because you're a smaller company.
Exactly.
Like
so, and also which means this kind of people is also harder to be found on the market.
Depends on the role. So it is interesting. So data science does become domain specific with experience. Is that a fair statement to make?
I think I think the specialization becomes more important when the work grows. So in the beginning of Notion, for example, I was one of the earliest data scientists joining Notion. Like everybody's working on everything. I was building GPT pipeline, I was building dashboard, I was doing a bunch of other things. I was talking with vendors to close deals, basically doing everything at the same time. But as Notion grows right now, when I joined Notion has about 100 people. Right now, Notion has about 800 people at this point. So every time we hire somebody, we need a person to have dedicated startup experience. We need them to work on certain domains. They have X years of experience. But when the company is at an early stage, I think the requirements are looser.
I see. Maybe a question for you, Chang. Like, in the next 1 to 2 years, do you see hiring for these roles becoming easier or harder from what you see in your in the data?
Yeah, I think to me, just from the supply side, just talk about supply. I do think there are going to be more candidates on the market. Is because all the tech companies still doing a lot of layoffs these days, and also there are just so many kind of programs in the college. They have like data science majors that everybody's training their kind of AI engineers and all that kind of stuff. So I do think there's still going to be a lot of supplies over there. But in terms of demand, I do see there might be a slowdown of hiring in some way, because I do see the world where a lot of kind of like mandate work that can be automated like by AI or by any like new technologies, like which means we probably don't need that many people at the same time, but rather we need people who can contribute to the work with some very unique knowledge that cannot be replaced easily by any technology. And also another thing I would say is because like people right now are using data in all different kinds of ways as well, especially given AI. As you just mentioned, like we're actually going to need to think about how to scale our data infra, like how to think about what data tools to choose, all that kind of stuff. I feel like we don't have that type of candidates yet there, who are readily available, because data science as a domain has been developing for so many years.
Yeah.
So that people have a lot of experience. But people who knows how to scale AI infrastructure is probably not so many yet. But everybody is trying to explore, trying to understand. So I would say that type of talents are probably gonna in high demand, but higher too.
Got it. You touched upon something very, very interesting, I think. And Chen, I would love to know your thoughts on this. As we automate, so to speak, mundane tasks with some of these models, do you see the data careers, ML careers, like the people you'll see need less people because of it?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think the pieces that are going to continue to remain are ultimately what are employees and human beings providing in terms of business value, right? Which things like AI and frankly robots are not going to be able to take over on, at least not yet. So I think maybe a bit of a differentiated answer around that is if we think about what big tech has done basically over the past couple of years, there's this remark and notion of efficiency. Right, like the year of efficiency kind of started at Meta, and other companies, including my own, have adopted. We call it game time, just given the context of Discord and games. But it's about wartime, game time. It's time to focus. And so, what can we do? How do we do more with less? And so, I don't imagine large swaths of hiring and resource pools opening up, at least in the near future. So, if we think about the frothy markets and the hyper growth ages of talent, that's just really hard to come by these days. So there's a lot of talent on the market, as we all know. There's a lot of density within that talent. So to what Mengying mentioned around, people looking for a little bit more specialty within the hiring process here.
There is certain privilege employers have to say, I'm looking for this specialty, this experience, and there is a high chance you'll find that role.
Yeah, there's specialty, but then it also depends on the stage of the company, right? So if you're a little bit earlier stage, you're not necessarily looking for specialty, you're looking for breadth. People that can roll up their sleeves and basically wear a DE hat, a DS hat, or even a PM hat at times.
Interesting. So you look for someone who has had these hats, and higher chances that you'll find it in the next year or so. That's how you sort of see it going.
At least for the foreseeable future, correct?
Yeah. Interesting. So Ryan and I and our team has been talking to a few people for the last few days, and I've been asking this question. Yes, the liquidity is higher in the market, but are you seeing any roles not hired because of just AI? If I try and isolate that, right, there are two reasons to say to not hire or hire less. Either you want to say, I want a highly efficient team because that's the need of the hour, or you say, oh, there is AI and I don't need that many people. Right? Now, for the first one, there is a resounding yes at many places. You say, yes, this is time for efficiency next 6 months, year, until the interest rates sort of are back to normal. There is that. But nobody seems to be saying that because of AI, I'm going to need fewer people. It just doesn't seem to be a part of the conversation at all.
I think it's too early, right? I think we are still at very early stages of AI adoption. So, there are roles there are people who are still doing, mainframes. They're still doing COBOL, right? So there are jobs
that's very small.
Yeah, they're shrinking. Yeah. So I don't think we have reached a point where we're seeing that shrinkage, but if you kind of extrapolate and maybe 5-10 years, I'm sure there will be some roles or not some roles, but some parts of your role that may not be needed, right?
Some parts of a role may not, like the mundane stuff.
Like the mundane stuff, yeah. If I had to look at data roles, building very generic data pipelines, I don't think humans would be doing that. A lot of that could be automated. Human might still be involved, but they would be spending very little part of their time doing that. So I think we are very early to say, some roles have completely been eliminated. At least I'm aware of some roles on the sales and marketing, which people have talked about, this could be completely automated, but I haven't seen that on the engineering side as much. Yeah.
Is that what you guys also find, or you have a different take, any of you?
I kind of want to answer this from a different angle. I think it depends on the company, right? So if the company really cares about making the right decision with the data, I don't think they're going to shrink the hiring. But people who want just to cut the budget, they just feel like, I just need data I just want to have a data-driven culture just on the paper, but I don't really care about it. A lot of companies are doing this, especially in a high-level decision room, you can see like, the data's there, but we don't really care about it. It's not going to be in the input for when I'm making decision. So people might replace the data team with the existing data tools out there, because there's so many tools out there that are trying to automate the data science job, allow the stakeholders to ask a question, like text-to-SQL thing is very popular these days. They allow the non-technical folks to ask a question, and then they can generate the query, the chart, the data for you, which they're trying to sort of eliminate the job of a data scientist, data analyst, or data engineer to some degree. But to me, I don't think the orgs who are in this kind of mindset is going to be successful. It's because, as Chen mentioned, there are so many parts of the data jobs that just cannot be replaced so easily by AI. So for example, as a data scientist who have been in the field for over a decade already, it's really like data scientists plays a very cross-functional role in the organization, so which is more than any other data roles. So we need to work with so many people like PM, design, Eng, data engineer all the time. So when something happens, we need to know who to talk to begin with. We need to who to align the decision to see what is the project that needs to be in the higher priority queue compared to other projects. And there are a lot of communications that cannot be replaced easily by AI. The second thing is really about like a business domain knowledge, which is really hard to be replaced by AI as well. So one example I gave you is, for example, every company, if you look at the quarterly financial report of every company, they always report some active users, right? Like weekly active user, daily active users. But even the active definition is going to be so different across different companies. Right? Like Snapchat's active is going to be different from the Facebook's active definition. And all these active definitions are defined by a human. So they have to understand the business so well. They know what kind of definition can really help the company and the investors to understand, okay, the company is actually doing well or not. And that's not something that can be easily replaced by AI. AI can tell you, okay, this company using active, this company use retention, but they can't tell you for your company specifically what kind of metrics you should use to begin with. So that's, to me, is more of a business domain knowledge. And the third thing I would say is data works are always very messy. You probably have encountered this a lot working the data. So one day the data pipeline is broken and some data is missing, some format is changing. That happens all the time. Like you ask AI to generate a chart for you from day 1 to day 10, but maybe day 8 the data is wrong. You couldn't use that data, but AI wouldn't know that. You still need human in the loop in order to, okay, I have to filter out that data in order to. Humans in the loop, yeah. Exactly. Right. So that's why maybe eventually I can be so advanced that they can replace all this functionality, as I mentioned, as a data scientist in the work, but in the near future, I don't see that's happening. In the near future, no. Okay. Yeah. I think it's time for audience questions. All right. Can we get the mics around? Let's see. Who has the mics? Who's carrying the mics? Microphones. Okay, yes, please just hand it. There are 2 microphones, yes.
Hello, hi everyone. Thank you guys for having us here. So thanks for arranging this. I think I've been with you guys since 2018. It's the first time I've seen so many people here. So thanks for listening to getting us together. Thank you. And thanks for all the panelists. Manoj, of course, I know you. I know you might not know me, but I know you well. So thanks for guiding us through all along. Excuse me. So I won't take much time, but my question is twofold. One is for Sandeep, and then one is for Ming. Can I call you Ming? That's good? Okay. Yeah, so I've been in the traditional software engineering field. It's been 15 years. The biggest challenge I see right now for me is breaking into a simple data role, right? No fancy words around, no, I'm a data infrastructure, blah, 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 right? A simple data role. My question to Sandeep is, and Ming as well is, when the market was still young, much easier to break into the data role, but now that it has matured, what can we do, or what can I, as a engineer who wants to switch, take as the first step, for the recruiter to recognize that, yeah, this guy can fit into a data role, and then we can go all the way, right? I think one of the things you mentioned was, in a bigger company, you're hired specifically for that role, right? You need to know A, B, C, D, right? Then I can hire you. It gets easier in the startup if you're really in a smaller startup, roll up your sleeves and do all the work. So, simple question, how can we tackle this challenge in today's date? I'm not talking about 5 years down before, but right now, what is the message we should be sending to the employers that, hey, I can do this. This is how much it would. These are the skills will be needed for a recruiter to switch from yes to a no when they're scanning your resume. Simple.
Yeah.
You want to take that first?
I can start. Do you mind telling me what size of companies are you at right now?
Right now, I am at CrowdStrike, but then they are not supporting a lot of remote roles anymore, so it's challenging. So I've been in companies with 150 people as well, and I have been in companies like size of Salesforce, basically. So yeah, that's where I am right now.
Okay, so basically there's no opportunity for you to kind of switch internally at any time soon right now at this point. Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the most favorable thing they want. It's not the first thing they want to do, It's like, yeah, you can switch, but put your own effort, do your own thing, do your own legwork, but it's not like a environment where, yeah, we support, whatever you want to do, let's come in, we'll try it out, Yeah. And especially with the market like this, as you said, I think you were specifying it the most, that the market is so fluid right now that, any changes you do, it might just work against you, right? Something like that.
So my recommendation for things like this is really, one, I think you can take on it's probably going to be a little bit harder to go to a kind of a growth stage company at this point, because as mentioned, either like Notion, Discord, all these companies, they are trying to hire somebody who have more specialized domains that they do have this requirement. But I would say either it comes at a smaller side of things, or the larger scale, Meta, Google. I think they are probably more loose your background requirement. That's just one thing I would say, just from the kind of the target company perspective. Secondly is, how do you make your resume to stand out, in so many kind of, candidates, right? To be honest, it's really hard thing to do these days, especially when you don't have dedicated experience and your resume gonna be screened out by recruiters to begin with, because they have a very, by the book, they have just the requirements for individual roles. So if you are trying to get a role in a smaller companies, I do encourage you to do more networking. Just beyond, of course, you need to kind of start doing some side project on the side. You have the, the dedication. You have the expertise to begin with. That's the prerequisite, I would imagine. In order to get a role in a smaller companies, I do think into the startups. To go into the startups like meetups, into network with people, trying to start with some kind of contracting roles to begin with, because a lot of startups right now are offering this kind of contracting or fractional roles to give you a sense about how it looks like, to start to work with a company. That you don't have a high commitment, they don't have a high commitment until you feel like it's a mutual fit. I think that's the way you can break into that role. And for larger companies, of course, the hiring process can be pretty standard, and you just need to find somebody who can internally refer you to the role. So hopefully, that can help.
Okay, thanks.
I think that was a great answer. The only thing my recommendation would be to try to go to smaller companies as well, just because they would value your experience more. That you can wear all these different hats, you can play different roles if they want you to. There is some foundational skills that you would need to learn to break into any of this. So there will be some data engineering specific things you might want to learn. There is some data infra or data science. So you would need at least some level of skills. And then it's, I think, especially in startups, I think referrals matter a lot more. So, networking and finding people who can refer you, I think that would be what I would recommend.
So just one thing there is, even if you are putting the effort and learning it on your own, right? Sometimes you get rejected only for the fact that you haven't worked on the product, actual product itself, right? I understand that with some experience under your belt, that can be taken, that can be looked over, but I think if the market thaws, then it's a different story. Right now, it gets challenging because I've spoken to recruiters actively, and they want that specific thing under your belt with a certain number of working hours. So just sharing that.
Yeah,
so,
I think that's. Yeah, I've seen that. I think what I would say, if you can't have that and you can't have those personal projects, look for adjacencies, right? If you are working in a security company, maybe there's a role in another security company that's data related, they might value your domain expertise, even if you don't have those technical skills, right? So find some adjacencies where that will help you break into those roles.
Thank you for the answer.
Sorry, I'm speaking out of turn. For all the kinds of questions that he asked, that is difficult to